Magandang araw, Podmates! Howie Severino muli na nagpapaalala na nakakatalino ang mahabang attention span. Ang guest natin ngayon ay si Bryan Benitez McClelland, isang Filipino-American na naninirahan na sa Pilipinas, gumagawa ng bamboo bikes at nagpapatakbo ng Bambike tours sa Intramuros at ngayon sa iba pang lugar. Magandang araw sa iyo, Bryan. How have you been?
Good morning, Howie. Been great. It's nice to be here on your show.
You and I have been having these off and on for more than 10 years. And I've actually also documented your journey in the Philippines to a certain extent. I attended one of your Bambike tours very early in your career here in the Philippines. You were just in your mid-20s then, a recent college graduate from a U.S. university. You were full of idealism, just starting your company, Bambike Revolutionary Cycles. But I want to ask you, Bryan, back then, did you expect to be in the Philippines this long? And what was it like in those first years?
Yeah, well, so I didn't imagine I was going to stay here as long as it's been. My initial feeling was I would be here for about 6 months. So that changed. You know, Bambike started after I'd been in the Philippines for 2 years. And now it's been going on 17 years here in the Philippines. So it's been a great journey of, getting in touch with my Filipino roots. As I'm, a Filipino-American, I always wanted to be more in touch with my motherland, as a Balik Bryan. And now that I've been a little bit more established with Bambike and we're expanding Bambike tours, I'm still optimistic, bamboo enthusiast who's really been enjoying his time here.
Okay, I'm going to ask you about bamboo, but first I want to go back to what you just said. You wanted to get to know your Filipino roots. So you grew up in the States. When did this interest in your Filipino roots begin? I know your mom is Filipina, born in the Philippines, born and raised here, but you were born and raised in the U.S. And not all Filipino-Americans are interested in their roots. Many are, but not all. How did that interest begin?
Well, fortunately, I was able to come back and forth to the Philippines as a kid. So ever since I can remember, coming here was part of just life for me. But I never was able to stay long enough to really feel like it was home or that I belonged here or anything more than, a summer vacation or a Christmas break. So the idea of just kind of embracing my Filipino side more has been there and a desire, and I wasn't able to really act on it until after I graduated college. Basically, I moved out here after school. And yeah, had a nice experience initially, just kind of being more in touch with my relatives and my distant family. My parents and my brother stayed in the US. But for me, yeah, it's been an exploration of the country, of my roots, and of myself, trying to figure out how to navigate being a Filipino-American and I identify very much as Filipino. I've got citizenship and I vote here and I try and play an active role, and I've really come to love the country so much. It's been my home, and I foresee staying here indefinitely.
Yeah, but you said you didn't expect to be here this long. You said you only expected 6 months. It's become how many years now?
17. Yeah.
Yeah. So what has kept you here?
I feel like I was able to find my purpose, and having developed a social enterprise started 15 years ago. One of my goals was always to have a positive impact on my community. And it just so happened that the Philippines became that community, and working with, a small Gawad Kalinga village in Victoria, Tarlac, and the impact that we were able to have as a small company on the lives of the people that we worked with, and then what we were able to achieve in terms of Filipino design and innovation, engineering bamboo into different products. The continued exploration and sustainability impact And the livelihood creation has been really what's kept me motivated and kept me driven to grow the company, but organically, so that we can spread our influence and share our experiences with more and more Filipinos and the international tourist market. Because since we've been doing Bambike eco tours, that enables us now to impact over 3,000 customers every month. So we feel like the importance of telling the sustainability story and getting people more interested in being green, in some way we can have a little impact on that with our products and our services. And then the better the company does, the more jobs we create. And it's just this kind of win-win cycle that we're trying to encourage in different communities. And I think that's the aspect of my kind of purpose and existence here that keeps me going and wanting to pursue this path of sustainable livelihood development.
You sound like you did when I was first talking to you. I mean, back then you were saying that your passions were aligning with opportunities. So you're very optimistic. But 17 years have passed. You're not jaded yet. I mean, no regrets or disappointments. No temptation to just pack up and leave.
Well, early on, so the temptation in the beginning, when Bambike was just a couple years old, when we were really on, nose to the grindstone, my temptation was, well, why not just go back to the US and get, some other job that I don't have to struggle through so much. Those were some thoughts early on. But then as we started to gain more traction and get a little bit more success, it was encouraging and it was a positive feedback loop. And I was describing this to some friends that were visiting just recently. And I think now, after 15 years of being in business, I finally feel like we're gaining some momentum. It's a really long timeline. And we've been doing Bambike eco tours for 10 years. And we just celebrated our deck doing ecotourism operations. And I kind of have to pinch myself thinking, wow, like we've really been at this for a while. But in some degrees, I'm feeling like we're just getting started. Like we proved to ourselves and to the market that we can sustain a business like this. And now my goal is to expand that vision towards, sharing this, spreading it, scaling it, so that we can have positive impacts on different communities and create more jobs in new locations and kind of leverage our lessons learned and our experience from what we've done the past 15 years into, a more focused kind of expansion plan for our business. For me, I'm ADHD and dyslexic, and so novelty and kind of excitement are part of my life. They have to be. And for me now, I'm bundling that with building from a stable kind of Bambike eco tours business platform into new ventures. So we're building bigger things, we're experimenting, and we're collaborating with other groups in ways that I never imagined were possible in the beginning. So now it's kind of more exciting than ever because we have broader shoulders to stand on and more collaborators to work with. And I think that's going to drive the next 10 years of our expansion and evolution.
Well, you've actually talked about, your early days in the Philippines when you were sleeping on cardboard on a cold floor, that kind of lifestyle for a while. But you say that, after 15 years, your company is just gaining momentum, and, you acknowledge that that is a long timeline. So there have been constraints to growth, right? I mean, it is a long time for a company. I don't know what you mean by momentum, though. Are you making money, or are you growing, et cetera, or you're becoming more popular? But it is a long time for you to feel you're just kind of starting to get momentum.
They say life begins at 40, right? So I just turned 40. And I feel like it's a new chapter, right? So the company's been profitable for many years. And I think we've come to a place now where at least our core operations are stable and growing year on year. I mean, we had a rough patch through the pandemic for sure, but we survived and have bounced back. And I think now I've built a team that can operate the company in such a way where I don't have to worry about the day-to-day nitty-gritty. I'm able to focus on next phase for us is going to be, and that's expanding into new locations, that's growing our impact and investing our time and our energy and our resources in the direction that I think will continue the cause of people, planet, progress, which is kind of the ethos of the company, is, you know, investing in communities, having sustainable manufacturing and services, and having profit, but with a purpose, driving our small business model into areas that we can go in and create jobs and work on sustainability issues like solid waste management and resource management and bamboo industry development and coastal coral reef conservation is kind of the new angle that we're taking. So Bambike is kind of going aquatic a little bit, and we're able to take all of our lessons learned and apply them into new arenas. And we've had really good positive feedback on that so far. So we're excited that the company has the momentum to enter new markets and get the attention that will facilitate kind of our organic growth. We're not trying to pour gasoline on the fire. We would rather build solar panels. So actually right now I'm designing and building a solar trailer. We're going to be I'm running this whole office right now off of solar energy. Actually, I've got panels on my roof right here, and I'm running everything off of renewable energy, and we'll be setting up more solar photovoltaic capacity to service our bike tours. These are the kinds of things that excite me. It's where we can leverage technology and apply it to our business, and that now has become an asset. Before, being green was kind of, oh, I don't know if that's really uso or is it just fringe? Now it's like, okay, if you're not embracing sustainability, like what are you thinking? Especially when it's just a practical thing like brownouts, high cost of energy, you know, being more self-sufficient as a company and as an individual and using new technology for me is exciting, an exciting interface on how that can address poverty and climate change. So all of these things are intertwined, and it's, for me, just getting more and more exciting.
Well, you've talked about the need to live dangerously in order to innovate, and just the way you want to live as well. I mean, what did you mean by that, and how have you lived dangerously?
Well, most recently, I picked up a sport called wing foiling. So it's like windsurfing, but you're holding a wing and you're on a hydrofoil. And because of that sport, I'm able to get far out to sea, and I've been able to encounter a lot of sea turtles. So for me, like, it's the most extreme sport I've ever done. One of the hardest sports I've ever learned. But it's been very gratifying because it's been a physical challenge. It's been outdoors in nature, and it's been enabling me to see my coastal environment and wildlife in ways that I haven't before. And it's got me thinking about, okay, these kinds of extreme sports, like how can we make some of this more accessible to people? And how can we encourage people to value the environment through different activities? So aside from wing foiling, I've also been doing baby scuba diving, which is using mini scuba air tanks and diving just 5-10 meters, but in coral gardens that are in the neighborhood. And they're kind of they're really in good condition, but then there's also so many corals around here being damaged by bad tourism, where anchors are being dropped directly on the reef. So by kind of experimenting with these new kinds of sports and activities, it's brought me to places that have gotten me very excited and having a lot of fun. But then also thinking about how can this be made accessible? How can this be incorporated into our ecotourism services? And how can this revenue generation serve the community? How can we come up with novel ideas that will attract visitors that have an interest in sustainability and supporting regenerative tourism is kind of the new buzzword that we're working on. So how can we take our services and instead of what the status quo is doing, which is damaging tourism, over tourism, how can we...
Excuse me, Bryan, what was the buzzword you mentioned?
Regenerative tourism.
Oh, regenerative tourism. I see. Okay.
Yeah, so like...
So what do you mean by that?
Becomes regenerative, meaning part of the proceeds of our services will go into supporting the solid waste management because there's a trash problem, right? There's plastic on the beaches. So if part of our services also include doing beach cleanups and facilitating garbage disposal, so we worked to set up a nonprofit called the Luyahan Preservation Association since the pandemic. And what we've been able to achieve there are regular beach cleanups, beach marshal service that constantly does cleanups. And this is run by the local communities. And then we've established solid waste management, so dump truck hauling. Before, everyone was just burning and burying their trash in our neighborhood. So this is the profit side, but with our Bambike Eco Tours, once we start operating later this year, we will be already incorporating composting and more advanced materials recovery and upcycling into our business practices. And so that's the way in which, by operating our services, we will be able to afford the manpower needed to do these things, which otherwise would previously be considered costs, right? But for us, since we incorporate them as normal operational expenses, that turns this tourism model into something that can help improve soil quality, clean up the plastic from the beaches, teach people about these things, and incentivize locals to participate in tourism. So for example, out front on the reef, instead of just dropping anchor directly on the reef, we've installed mooring buoys. The problem is the local tourism community that isn't used to doing that, and there aren't enough mooring buoys yet. So he just submitted a UN grant application for the ASEAN Blue Innovation Challenge to deploy more buoys and to run workshops to teach the stakeholders, which are the local boatmen and the local tour guides, how to slowly not stop what they're doing, but do it in a way that's not destructive. There's many, many things around here. It's like, as I said, it feels like we're just getting started. It's because we've entered a new community when there's a whole host of different challenges. And for me, my background is in, environmental resource management. So I come into this environment and this community thinking about the interconnectedness of all of the different operations and the people here. And yeah, I guess these are the things that kind of I see as long-term kind of legacy projects that we can fund it through sustainable operations of our business and create more jobs that revolve around this. Then that could create sustainable change within the community to encourage the tourism operators to start doing things a little different. And then hopefully over time, proving that that becomes more profitable doing the right thing than scraping by doing the wrong thing.
Well, you need to be really patient for that kind of change. But the pandemic must have been really difficult for small companies like yours. Because tourism was dead, basically. So how did you survive?
So we got lucky in some ways. We saved a bit, so we were able to hold out for some time. But we had to do a number of different things. I mean, initially we had to cut all bleeding and reduce our kind of real estate. So we had numerous places we were renting, so we had to just tighten the belt, let go of excess stuff. A number of our staff had left, but our pledge was to maintain all of the staff that wanted to stay with us. So in order to sustain them, we liquidated vacation and sick leaves and advanced 13th month and provided as much financial support as we could afford. We were able to avail of a government grant from the SB loans system. That extra cash helped us survive a bit. We were able to negotiate a deferred rent payment plan with our landlord of the Intramuros administration. We were able to plead and negotiate with our other landlord for deferred rent in our house and home workshop. And then we just focused more during the pandemic on bike manufacturing and sales. So fortunately, there was an increase in biking. The infrastructure around the city was improving. There was more of a focus on promoting bike transportation. And so we were able to ride that wave a bit and increased our bike sales during that time. So we weren't solely dependent on the tourism. But yeah, it was a struggle. And so we also recognized the challenge of transportation when it was full lockdown and there was no public transportation. So we deployed our whole ecotourism bike fleet, which at the time was over 60 plus bikes. And we brought them to hospitals for nurses and doctors and frontliners to be able to use as their commuting vehicles because we couldn't use them to operate. So that was one of the small things that we did to try and help. But yeah, once things opened up again, we were able to, get people back in the saddle. But it was a big challenge for sure.
Yeah. So speaking of biking, I mean, you've long been advocating inclusive mobility, especially there in Intramuros. Recently, there was news that something like 9 to 10 kilometers of bike lanes with upgraded pedestrian walkways have been built in Intramuros. Now, you've been there for a long time. You've been running Bambike tours for years. So are those Intramuros bike lanes, this news, is this legit? I mean, are those usable bike lanes for your purpose and for the purpose of, real cyclists?
So this project was a long time in the works. I think they started thinking about this 10 years ago, roughly when we entered the Intramuros community. But I have to say the impact in the last year has been really great. One of the major things that the Intramuros administration and the DOTR has done is pedestrianize General Luna Street, which is the main thoroughfare going straight through the middle of Intramuros. And this is along the path of where Bambike is located. And it's had an immediate and major impact. There was pushback initially, but I think the real winners are the visitors and the community in general, because you don't have traffic driving straight through the heart of this ancestral kind of heritage site. And you allow people to walk through the streets somewhat like they were back in the day.
Yeah,
and
but no biking on General Luna, just walking.
There is biking. So it's pedestrianized, meaning you can bike or walk, but no cars or motorcycles.
Okay.
So for us, it's had an immediate impact and it's been great. And then there are bike lanes around the perimeter and crossing through different major roads within Intramuros, and our tours use them every day. So we have bikers going out and using these pedestrianized and bike lane areas every day. And I have to congratulate and thank the Intramuros admin and the Department of Transportation for this. And I encourage them to do. I mean, you go outside the walls and it's a different story. Various cities within the metro have done better or worse jobs. Rappler did a pretty good coverage over the different bike lane implementation all over the city. So there's a lot to be desired, but it has slightly improved. And I do still advocate people to bike more. And I hope more people see the benefits in bike commuting, just based on practicality, time, cost savings. Kawawa naman yung commuters that are lining up and don't own their time. It always makes me wonder, like, how long do they wait, and how long would it have taken them to bike home? Would that have been a possibility? What if there was a way to encourage more people that are commuter bound to becoming bikers, where they can get financing for bikes, or if there's enough infrastructure where it becomes practical for them? I mean, there's a lot of barriers, but I hope that there can be continued efforts making it more convenient and easier, and that people can see the practicality and cost savings that come with being able to bike from home to work or for other trips.
You mentioned pushback, and usually the pushback on initiatives like that comes from, motorists, because there's less space for cars and motorcycles. So did this move lead to more traffic of cars elsewhere in Intramuros? I mean, because that's also that's a separate problem, but it's still a problem, right?
Yeah, I think the rerouting of some of the traffic to previously less used streets was just an adjustment period, but I haven't seen it be such a huge hindrance. I think the real success of the project is you see people using the streets how they should be, at least in these corridors. And then the car traffic is just kind of being rotated around on one-way streets around the perimeter and through specific crosses. I think, yeah, most of the pushback would probably be from car drivers. And I think there is more energy now being poured into building a new parking structure, and then hopefully having last mile or last kilometer kind of services, being the pedicab operators and e-trikes and these kinds of services for people to be able to get around. So, I mean, I think on the whole, yeah, it's a little less convenient if you drive a personal car, but that's not who these projects are for. Projects should be for the people and for the visitors, and to maintain that kind of historic tourism district as much as possible, and not be over congested in the prime areas with vehicular traffic that just congests stuff up.
Okay, you run these tours, no, using bamboo bicycles. Why not also use ordinary bicycles? What's the difference in experience between touring around on a bamboo bicycle versus an ordinary bike?
Well, I mean, firstly, our bikes are made in the Philippines, so that's something that we're proud of, and we think gives our guests something novel to experience. And of course, when you see them, you kind of question: is that really bamboo? Is it strong enough? There's this curiosity and the novelty factor. But I think the ride quality also, you get vibration dampening. I mean, it functions just as a normal bike would. But I think the story that, these bikes were made in a community, they're helping create jobs, it's using locally grown bamboo, it's helping in our small way, at least raise awareness about climate change and supporting an industry that is sequestering carbon, and, promoting just, local manufacturing and consumption. Life's more fun on a band bike.
So of all the things you could be focusing on in the Philippines, why bamboo? How did that interest start?
I had discovered this bamboo bike project in Ghana in 2007. And that was right around the time that I moved to the Philippines. And I always was thinking, how cool it would be to be able to do that kind of a project here in the Philippines, because we have bamboo, we have a rural workforce that's skilled, and we have poverty, we have climate change, we have all of these things. Like, what can we do? And biking for me was always a big part of just getting around. I'm not a competitive cyclist. I bike because it's practical and because it's fun. And then, yeah, just building it out of something that's green. Bikes are green to begin with, but then making it even greener with local manufacturing and something that, as a environmental scientist, knowing the environmental benefits that bamboo has to help sequester carbon, stabilize soil, prevent runoff and flooding and landslides, and then food and structures and shelter capabilities of the material are incredible. And I used to see and still see such an incredible opportunity developing the bamboo material. And then furthermore, you discover the Philippine mythology and creation story of Malakas and Maganda. It's really deeply rooted in the Philippine culture and heritage. And taking that to the next level for me has been just such an incredible journey and an obsession. The World Bamboo Organization, which I'm a part of, has kind of stirred this drive and passion. So I'm in a community of crazy bamboo people that are showing what's possible with the industry, the plantation.
So why aren't we using more bamboo? When I go to some other Asian countries, bamboo is used in a lot of functional ways, not just for decoration or as a novelty, but like, for example, in construction scaffolding, instead of steel, like in Hong Kong, they use bamboo for a lot of projects there. But here, I don't ever see that.
So it's growing slowly. I think one of the major issues is the inclusion of bamboo into the building code. So that's been on process for a number of years, and it's finally starting to gain some traction and ground. I think things are in the works, so you'll see some more applications. But yeah, it's only been in the last 10 years that you've seen a bigger push for the material to be used. So bamboo architects have been springing up. More and more projects are being built. And what's exciting is that you're seeing larger scale plantations being planted and larger scale manufacturing. So it's increasing the capacity. And I think for the longest time, bamboo is always viewed as the poor man's timber, right? Because it was used to build bahay kubo that wasn't treated, which would get bukbuk and mold and disintegrate after a few years. So that kind of poverty mentality of the material being used for temporary shelters had stuck for a long time. And it's something we had to really combat against because people didn't believe that bamboo would be strong enough or long enough lasting. So fast forward till now, you've got a lot more examples of people building bigger and bigger structures with bamboo. So you've got a lot more bambelievers, and you've got groups like the Bamboo Boot Camp and other small social enterprises who can build, more impressive and meaningful and long-lasting stuff out of bamboo. And yeah, I think it's gaining momentum as well, the industry, and the availability of treated bamboo has inhibited growth of the industry. But these things are trying to be addressed region by region, and hopefully more and more people will see what's possible with bamboo and invest in expansion. And most recently, I know that in Mindanao, where we have maybe the most of the Philippine bamboo, there are factories being made to create more engineered bamboo that will be consumed domestically. And yeah, growing bamboo is a great long-term investment for the future. And yeah, I think it's just, it takes time to change because most traditional construction, people believe cement is the solution. And I think, I'm not a purist. I don't think everything has to be 100% bamboo, but I think a combination of conventional and now more natural materials and figuring out how to advance material science and construction using kind of a blended hybrid model of construction is something that's going to continue to be exciting and to develop and to stimulate the economy. And more of these things get seen, more and more of these things will be demanded. And yeah, I'll show you some. We use bamboo scaffolding. I was just climbing some of it earlier in the backyard where we're building our treehouse.
You mentioned that large bamboo plantations are being developed. What are they being used for now? That's fueling the growth in supply and the growth of in planting bamboo.
So there's a couple of different approaches that I've been learning about, and one is using bamboo to create engineered boards and beams for interiors and construction for different applications. So creating furniture, but then also wall panels and structural components, primarily interior, because bamboo needs to have certain protections and treatments. But there's more and more, even if you look at the hotel and the Senate building, I mean, there's some controversies, happening there, but I think some bamboo is planning to be included. And I think globally, there's an increased demand in natural materials that are not, coming from old growth forests. So bamboo is situated in a way where you have rapid growth, where you're getting structural bamboo poles that can be manipulated after 3 or 4 years. Whereas an equivalent tree, you'd need it to be 30, 40 years old. So you've got a growth cycle. And since bamboo is a grass, it's perennial. It will keep shooting more and more material if you take care of the bamboo stands. So it's an exciting alternative. And I think as the scale picks up, the prices will come down, then the demand will grow, where people see it as a viable alternative to plywoods or other hardwood finishings. You're getting applications where it's basically going to become like a lumber yard. So instead of buying a 2x4 or tongue and groove flooring made out of wood, you can do it out of bamboo. And that exists already. It's just not at the price where it can have mass adoption yet. So as the capacity grows, the market supply side kind of will all adjust. On the other hand, you're getting plantations which can be planted just using global carbon credits. So there's an international market which is supporting carbon sequestration. And if you have verified, certified carbon sequestration projects using bamboo, you qualify for that. So there are international companies making investments in Philippine bamboo plantations for that purpose. And then that material that is harvested once those stands are mature can be used for pulp, paper, pellets, that can be used for biogas, like energy, and for, again, alternatives for a whole host of different industrialized manufacturing. So there's a lot of exciting stuff, because the demand for natural materials is only going to increase. And I think bamboo is a great investment towards, having sustainable materials kind of future pipeline in the works.
Before we ask you to show us some of these projects you've been working on, I just want to go back to something you said earlier. You said that you're a naturalized Filipino now, or a Filipino citizen. This morning I mentioned to a member of my family that I was going to interview you, and another member of the family said, "Oh, I heard that he's now a Filipino citizen." And then another member of the family said, "Why would he want to become a Filipino citizen?" In other words, this attitude of, he's already an American. Why would he want to go back to being a Filipino? That kind of thing. So, but my response was, there are legal advantages to being a Filipino citizen and living in the Philippines, but I'm sure there are other reasons why. I mean, in a nutshell, why did you become a naturalized Filipino or a Filipino citizen? You're a dual citizen, right? I mean, both Filipino and American.
Yes. I mean, my mother is 100% Filipina. And upon coming back to the Philippines, realized also, there are advantages to being a passport holder here. But it was in part a sense of national pride, being able to participate as a citizen in this community, being able to vote, being able to run a 100% Philippine-owned business, and use that as a sense of nationalistic pride, saying, we're not, I didn't want to feel or come across as, a neo-colonizer, like, oh, just coming back here to take advantage of, the Philippines or exploit something in some way. I wanted to really embrace being Filipino and making sure my businesses are registered as a Filipino, making sure that I can participate fully in this democracy and encourage people to do the same. I've been voting ever since I've been able to. I transferred my voting registration to Lian, Batangas, so I can have even a more localized effect. I was previously in Makati, but I want to be an active citizen. I've always wanted to be, and I've struggled because most people look at me and they say, oh, he's not Filipino. And I've actively had to promote myself as a Filipino because I think it's important and I want that connection to the ground. I've had to learn the language. I feel like I'm more Filipino in many ways than a lot of my native born 100% Filipino friends because I try and take an extra effort to support Filipino stuff and to advocate, for the Philippines. And, I've taken it on as a cause because I've struggled as a young Filipino entrepreneur and seen so many small businesses fail. And one of the things that I've wanted to, help promote with my other business, the Philippine Artisan Trade and Batalabar, is to help get Filipino companies and social enterprises, on stable ground and collaborating with other Filipino innovators, designers, business people, product manufacturers, and anything that can be done has, been a sense of national pride for me. And I think, as I said, I'm balik Bryan, and I have terrible jokes like I'm parang itlog ako, puti sa labas pero Pinoy sa loob. I kind of laugh at these things, but I, on a serious note, wanted to really be able to vote as a citizen, to own a business, to operate with all of the benefits of being Filipino. And I wish it was easier for more people with Filipino blood that grew up abroad to become citizens, because I see it as an advantage encouraging other maybe second gen and beyond Filipinos that say grew up abroad from OFW parents that have an interest in coming back to the Philippines, but there's visa issues sometimes. I mean, you can only stay so long, you can only own so much, and you have to jump through a lot of hoops to get Filipino citizenship. It's not as easy as I thought it would be. And I think it's discouraging for other younger second-gen Filipinos. So many Filipino-Americans want to come back to their motherland and figure out how they can integrate somehow, somewhere. And if we don't acknowledge this desire or understand the steps needed to take to become a citizen for those people who have Filipino blood, I think it's a loss for the country. Like, I think all of these people would be able to, it would effectively be kind of hybrid foreign direct investment, and it would stimulate more people with stakes in the Philippines to come and invest. And that would help stimulate and grow the economy, I think, in a meaningful way.
Okay, well said. You suggested giving us a short tour of what you've been working on. I've been seeing on Instagram, but I'm sure that's just a fraction of what you're really doing.
Yeah, you'll get the first-hand exclusive virtual tour, Howie. You're going to have a special adventure tour here.
I'm going to walk you out to the sea turtle. So it is a floating little adventure pod. This was the prototype raft that we built. And then back here you see the traditional style balsa. But I wanted to create something that actually is a tribute to a sea turtle washed up here dead from a ghost net. It was strangled. So I decided to build this sea turtle as tribute to that. And we use this as kind of an ecotourism and education center. So you can see the body of it. And these are hammocks where you can chill out. So we actually use this as a diving platform as well. We bring our baby scuba tanks out. It's got seating. We can put a picnic table inside. And it's just a way to appreciate the natural environment out here. And then we also have taken school groups and young kids out for kind of a eco education kind of experiences and kind of a summer camp of sorts. And so we created it in part to kind of make a statement and encourage people to be curious about the wildlife around here, because largely some of this normalism that you get coming in on these paddle boats, they're not really getting educated or informed so much about, you know, the coral life and the sea life. It's kind of just a let's go swimming experience. And we want to kind of elevate the information that people get and the experience so that they can come away having, you know, learned about marine science and the coastal community and help create more jobs around this kind of ecotourism business model. It's just fun. I like to explore and so yeah, that's the sea turtle. You have to come down and we bring it out into the middle of the ocean there, and we can do like sunset cocktails, and it's a nice little thing. So this will be operational more so in the coming months as we establish more of our ecotourism operations here.
Okay, so we're coming up to the tree house here where we've been working on a covered staircase. This is a bridge that's going to take you into the tree house up here. And you come down this staircase and this platform here. All right, so still work in progress. So I'm here back where we built the initial A-frame structure, which is now kind of a building center and storage. We've got our Bambikes here, which will turn into our cafe, and the bamboo plantation and fruit trees that we're planting are all coming to life now that we're starting to get a little rain.
Yeah, well, that looks great. That looks great. We know you have a lot of BAM building to do. So we want to thank you for sharing and for your service to the community. Bryan Benitez, McClelland, founder of Bambike Tours of Intramuros, at marami pang iba. Mabuhay ka. Thank you so much.
All right. Bambuhay, Howie. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Howie Severino. Check out the Howie Severino Podcast. New episodes will stream every Thursday. Listen for free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and other platforms.